When the tornado hit Kentucky in 2021, entire homes didn't just collapse, they were erased, and inside one of those homes were two babies.
329, can you get down here? We need help. We got somebody under this.
This is Clara Lutz, a grandmother who in just a matter of seconds had to make a decision that no parent or grandparent should ever have to face. This wasn't just another storm warning. In the small town of Dawson Springs, the air suddenly turned heavy. The birds went silent, and the sky, it took on a sickly, haunting shade of green. Clara Lutz looked out her window and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. She knew they were in the path of a monster, but she had no basement, no underground shelter, and only seconds to act. With the roar of a freight train approaching her front door, Clara made a desperate, final choice. A choice that would either save her grandchildren or be the last thing she ever did for them. There was no more time for watching the sky. The sound was no longer a rumble. It was a scream. Clara grabbed Caden and Dallas, her only thought being the one thing in the house that might hold, the porcelain bathtub. She lined it with blankets, placed the babies inside, and gave them a pillow, a shield made of fabric against a wall of wind. She prayed, but an EF4 tornado doesn't care about prayers. The pressure dropped so fast, her ears popped, and then the floor beneath them simply ceased to exist.
Hello.
This is 911. Where's your emergency?
Yeah, Casey, Kentucky is no longer on the map.
Listen, everybody has been hit, and we're going to get help to you as soon as possible, okay?
Oh my God, let me see. It looks like the whole roof is down. Yes, we're at Casey and we have no home left.
The candle factory, the building collapsed. Well, I've got about 130 employees here.
There's damage at the plant and people have been trapped at the plant.
My dad girl, she called me from MCP and said the building
Yes,
collapsed.
ma'am. We've got several calls from it. We're trying to get people on the way, but we've had tornado destruction everywhere, including the police department and the fire department.
The trapped underneath the door?
Yes, yeah, me and my daughter, yes.
Okay, I'll get somebody out there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
As night began to fall, police and fire crews were still moving through the wreckage, searching what was left of the neighborhood. They had been out there for hours, digging, lifting, calling out into the silence. But there was still no sign of the babies, no blanket, no bathtub, no sound, nothing. And as time passed, hope started to fade. Because in a storm like this, survival isn't measured in hours, it's measured in minutes. And they were far past that. Until then, something broke the silence.
Can you get down here? We need help. We got somebody under this debris in the bathtub.
We're looking for a 15-month-old.
329, we got the theme, or I think a 15-month-old.
Yeah, but we're going to try to get them to you.
There you go.
Good deal. She okay?
They found them, and the family were so thankful. It's just after sunrise. The tide is already creeping in, and on a quiet stretch of rocky coastline, a 17-year-old boy is about to do something he never planned for, something with no training, no equipment, and no time to think twice. All he has is a small blue plastic bucket, the kind you'd find forgotten in a garden shed. In the next few minutes, that bucket is going to mean the difference between life and death for a stranded baby seal. This is the story of how an ordinary morning walk turned into a race against the ocean itself. Jake wasn't supposed to be on the beach that early. He told his parents he was going for a run before school, the kind of half-truth teenagers tell when they really just want a few minutes of quiet before the day gets loud. The coastline here is beautiful, but unforgiving. Jagged rock pools, slippery kelp beds, a tide that doesn't ask permission before it comes in. It simply arrives, faster than most people expect, swallowing the exposed rock in under an hour. Jake had walked this beach 100 times. He knew its rhythms, or at least he thought he did. What he didn't know was that today, the tide was bringing someone that needed his help. It was the sound that stopped him first, a high, raspy bark, almost like a cough, coming from a cluster of rocks about 30 meters ahead. He almost walked past it. Almost, but something made him climb down toward the noise, and there, wedged between two slick boulders, was a baby seal, small, exhausted, barely raising its head as the waves lapped closer with every passing minute. It had likely been separated from its mother during the night, washed into this rocky pocket by a current it had no power to fight. Now it was trapped, too weak to climb out, and directly in the path of a rising tide that would, within the hour, completely submerge that crevice. Jake's heart started pounding. He pulled out his phone. No signal, of course not. He was completely alone, with a frightened, struggling animal, and a clock that was already running out. Here's what most people don't realize about a stranded seal. You can't just pick one up and run. Wild seals bite hard. Their jaws are built for crushing shellfish and slippery fish. A panicked one will absolutely defend itself against anything that looks like a threat, including a well-meaning teenager. Wildlife experts are unanimous on this point. Direct contact with bare hands is dangerous for both the rescuer and the animal. So Jake stood there for a moment, frozen, replaying every nature documentary he'd ever half-watched. He needed distance between his hands and those teeth. He needed something to scoop, not grab. That's when he remembered the bucket. Earlier that week, he'd left it on the beach after helping his little sister build a sandcastle. It was sitting exactly where he'd abandoned it, half-buried, sun-faded, utterly unremarkable. In that moment, it became the only tool standing between this animal and the sea. The water was already at his ankles when he reached the bucket. He waded back toward the rocks, the cold cutting through his sneakers, salt spray stinging his eyes. The seal pup let out another bark, sharper this time, more afraid. Jake slowed down. He'd seen enough to know that sudden movement would only panic it further, maybe even cause it to thrash itself deeper into the crevice. So he knelt, slowly, carefully. He lowered the bucket at an angle, edge first, the way you'd guide a frightened cat into a carrier, talking to it the entire time, low, steady, nonsense words that meant nothing except, "I'm not going to hurt you." The first attempt failed. The seal lurched sideways, slapping against the rock, more tangled than before. The water was climbing past his knees now. He had one shot left before the gap between the boulders would be too deep to safely reach into it all. Jake repositioned. This time, instead of scooping from the front, he angled the bucket from behind the pup's body, using the natural slope of the rock as a ramp. He pushed gently. The seal, exhausted and out of options, finally stopped fighting the bucket and simply slid inside, curling into the small space like it somehow understood this strange plastic container wasn't the enemy. For a second, neither of them moved. Boy and seal, both soaked, both breathing hard, separated by nothing but a few millimeters of blue plastic. Then, Jake stood up, lifted the bucket against his chest, and started climbing back over the rocks, now slick with incoming seawater, toward dry sand. He didn't carry the seal far. Wildlife rescue guidelines are clear. Stranded marine mammals should be released back into the ocean, as close to the original location as safely possible, away from the immediate danger, not transported elsewhere. So Jake found a stretch of open beach, just clear of the rocks, where the water was calm and shallow. He tipped the bucket gently onto its side. The seal hesitated for a moment, disoriented, blinking against the morning light, and then, in one smooth motion, slipped out and into the surf. It paused once, looking back toward the shore. Then it dove and disappeared beneath the waves. Jake stood there, soaked, holding an empty plastic bucket, and felt something he hadn't expected. Not pride, exactly, just relief. The quiet, overwhelming kind. There's no dramatic ending here. No news cameras, no medal, no viral fame in the moment it actually happened. Jake walked home, told his parents what happened over breakfast, and went to school like normal. But experts who study human-wildlife encounters often point to stories exactly like this one as proof of something important. You don't need expensive equipment, formal training, or perfect conditions to make a difference. Sometimes you just need to notice, to actually stop and listen when something doesn't sound right, and to be willing to act with whatever happens to be in reach. In Jake's case, that was a forgotten plastic bucket, a stranded seal, a rising tide, a teenager who almost walked past. It's easy to imagine heroism as something big and loud, but more often, it looks like this: quiet, fast, and a little bit improvised. A kid kneeling in cold water, talking nonsense to a frightened animal, because some quiet part of him refused to just keep walking. If you ever find yourself face to face with a stranded marine animal, remember, don't touch it directly, give it space, and call your local wildlife rescue if you can. But never underestimate what a little quick thinking and whatever's lying around can do. He was lost at sea for 438 days. No land, no rescue, and no way back. Just endless ocean. At first, survival was simple, stay alive. But after a few days, his body started to break. The sun burned his skin, the salt dried into it, and the water slowly disappeared. So he did what he had to do. He caught whatever he could, drank whatever he could, and held on for as long as he could. This is Jose Salvador Alvarenga, and what started as a 2-day fishing trip turned into one of the longest survival stories in history. This is Jose Salvador Alvarenga, a fisherman from the coast of Mexico. In 2012, he went out for what should have been a simple 2-day fishing trip, but a sudden storm pushed his small boat far out into the Pacific Ocean, farther than anyone expected. At first, survival was simple. Find something to eat, find something to drink, and stay alive. He caught birds with his bare hands, ate them raw just to survive. There was no clean water, so he drank whatever he could find, even when it wasn't safe. The sun never stopped, day after day, burning his skin, draining his body, and the ocean just kept moving, carrying him further and further away. Because after a while, survival stops being the hardest part. Finding food, finding water, staying alive, it becomes routine. But out there, something else begins to change. The horizon never moves. The days stop feeling like days, and the nights don't feel like nights anymore. Everything starts to blur together. When there's nothing around you, nothing changing, nothing to measure time, time starts to disappear. From the beginning, there was almost nothing around him, just the ocean and the sky. Days passed, and nothing changed. No voices, no movement, no sign that anyone was out there. And after a while, the silence stopped feeling quiet. It started to feel loud, so he started talking to the birds, giving them names, answering his own questions, just to hear something other than nothing. Because when you're alone for that long, you don't just lose track of time, you start to lose yourself. Most people think survival is about hope, waiting, believing that someone will come. But out there, hope can be dangerous, because every day you expect to be saved, and you're not. Something inside you breaks. So he stopped waiting. He stopped looking at the horizon, stopped counting the days, stopped believing it would end. And that's when everything changed. He wasn't a man lost at sea anymore. He became a man who lived there, and that is what kept him alive.